here to be talking about this subject. Most of the time when I talk about this, I do a lot of presentations on the pipeline, what inhibits people going into the industry, but today I really want to talk about, creating the culture and how we can get these women to stay in the industry as well. So my name is Nancy Naluz, and you can follow me on Twitter or ask me questions on Twitter at Nancy Naluz. You can also find me on GitHub at Nancy Naluz. A little bit about me. I'm a front-end web developer at Dynamo. Dynamo is a digital design studio based here in Montreal. We work with making mobile applications, web applications, particularly in the realm of e-commerce. And we work with a lot of interesting startups, from delivering tampons to drones to curing cancer. The iPad just... The password. Sorry. Thank you. I'm also the founder of the Montreal chapter for Ladies Learning Code, as well as the Montreal chapter leads for Ladies Learning Code. For those of you that don't know this organization, we're a Canadian women-run not-for-profit that runs workshops for women to learn programming in a social and collaborative environment. So the big word, diversity. This talk will focus a lot on gender diversity, but I don't want to mitigate the other forms of diversity that I think that the industry can totally benefit from, including race, including ableism, including economic class, including sexual orientation. I think these two are really important to highlight, but for this talk and the scope of this talk and for this conference, I want to talk a lot about gender. I think a lot of studies and a lot of talks, a lot of conferences, a lot of Medium blog posts have been written about this subject, about how diversity can help your business, creating different perspectives, enforcing good team building. It's just ultimately good for creating an awesome product. And I think these are great. I think it's a great sort of idea that we have that we can back it up with, but I really hope that one day we can just aim for diversity, period. I think right now it's an amazing time to have technology be so powerful, and I think it would be amazing if it was a little bit more accessible for everybody to have a better understanding of it, and also for more people to be in this field. So I want to introduce this talk with a number of statistics to kind of frame the scope of this conference on gender diversity. So over the past 20 years, the number of Canadian women graduating STEM is declining. Despite it being 2016, it's actually going lower. Women are still being paid lower than their male colleagues. Despite girls saying, they have an interest in STEM when in middle school, that interest actually goes down when they're in high school, and they don't choose it as a post-secondary major. Women in our industry believe that there's a lack of mentorship for the workplace that is readily available for them. And over 52% of women actually leave the STEM industry despite being highly qualified for various reasons. Some of them hostile work environments, isolation from their male peers, and severe job pressures. There was a really great article that was, I think, posted last month about how women's pull requests, so pull requests is something, I want to make a change to that code in GitHub. And it was saying that, user researchers were analyzing 1.4 million users on GitHub and found that women were actually more likely to have their pull requests accepted. It was higher than men. However, when their gender was identifiable, it actually lowered to 62.5%. So there's definitely still a bias within gender within the tech industry. Stack Overflow, they released their numbers too for 2015 for a survey, and they surveyed, I believe, over 26,000 people from over 157 countries, many different developers, and I think when I speak for all developers, we always check this site to look for solutions, to share code, to discuss code, and offer your opinion. And the number of people that, or the number of male participants that are on this forum are 92.5%. So what is the pipeline that inhibits women from entering the industry? And the only thing I can do is really talk from my personal experience. I don't come from a computer science background. Sure, my father is a computer engineer, my brother is a software developer, yet for a long period of time, I was considered a Luddite. So a Luddite, this is something that I got from the Merriam Dictionary, one of a group of early 19th century English work men or women destroying labor-saving machinery as a protest, broadly, and I think this is the most important point, one who is opposed to especially technological change. I have a background in classical guitar performance. I really hated technology. I didn't understand why we were consuming so much content. We were getting all of our news from social media. And for most of it, I think I was really frustrated with technology because I didn't really understand it. I was basically terrified of it, and I thought technology was just ultimately bad for the environment. But at the same time, I knew technology wasn't going anywhere, and I knew I needed to make a career change after I studied music at York University in Toronto. So I took an approach to technology that was both hands-on and critical. I did communication studies at Concordia, where it was very hands-on, but we were also looking at digital accessibility, and that's what got me into this sort of topic that I'm very passionate about today. A professor by the name of Ian Riley talked to us about Ladies Learning Code, a women-run, not-for-profit organization that runs workshops for women to learn programming in a social and collaborative environment. But it wasn't here in Montreal. Fortunately enough, I'm from Toronto, and I was visiting my family, and they had a workshop there, and I attended one of their workshops, and we made a social network for cats using Drupal. And I was like, this is very, very cool. I mean, I don't have any programming experience. I took one programming class when I was in high school. There were 5 girls, all of us sitting together, and 20 boys. I felt completely isolated. It was the worst mark I ever got in high school, and it made me never want to go into this field. So that was like my only programming experience other than Angel Fire and doing a little bit of HTML on MySpace. But like this was a really cool experience, you know. I mean, not at the end I wasn't a Drupal developer, but I got a little taste of what it could be. And I thought, you know, this would be amazing to be in Montreal. Sure, I didn't know anyone in the industry. Sure, I didn't know what the difference between back-end and front-end of web development was, but I was interested to see the reaction here in the city. So it was founded in 2014. It's now our 2nd year. We have now 3 chapter leads. One is Cassiel Riom, who has been spearheading Ladies Learning Code to be more bilingual, and Eva Ola, who is now doing more of the youth workshops here. We've had 40 workshops, over 900 participants, and over 300 mentors at our events. So leading Ladies Learning Code, I didn't fully understand code, but I was really eager to get my hands dirty and just sort of understand and try to follow along with the workshops. I met the most amazing mentors and people in the startup community, and it made me really interested. You know, I really want to be more a part of this community. And leading Ladies Learning Code, it gave me the confidence to just go and learn code. I attended Hacker U, which is a boot camp in Toronto, founded by the same team of Ladies Learning Code, and 9 weeks later, I was a front-end web developer, and a month afterwards, I started my internship at Dynamo, where I'm still happily employed. So looking back on my previous life, I've been trying to reflect and, you know, see how did I become from a Luddite that was so terrified of technology, thinking this field was so inaccessible, to now being in love with technology and using it as a way to express myself, to help others, and I really hope that other people see that too. So I've been trying to have this idea, you know, what if it was the education and the inaccessibility that I thought? Perhaps it was something that happened when I was in high school, being in that programming class, feeling really isolated, not wanting to ask the teacher, I don't understand what's going on, and feeling very, very insecure about my knowledge. It seemed like all the boys knew what they were doing, and us girls were just trying to help each other out. And that was a really fun class, actually helping each other out together, but it was very isolating to see all those boys just like zoom by, and the teacher didn't care. I think introducing technology at an early age prior to enforcing gender stereotypes of the industry, I think that could possibly help. I'm not saying that everybody should be a web developer. I don't want to stop anybody from shooting for their dreams, but I think that introducing coding at a younger age could definitely help. I think we should all learn at least the basics. It's very similar to science and mathematics. I think it was the learning environment, like I said. I think it was a very inclusive environment with mentors that was social and collaborative, and Ladies Learning Code really did that for me, creating that environment. HackerU, so this is actually my cohort. We're doing because we were apparently really, really quiet. I don't know why. But this is our cohort 3, and HackerU was really great in creating that inclusive environment. I think it might have been the fact that it was founded by the same team of Ladies Learning Code, so that way they have a 75% women enrollment at their boot camps. On the very first day, I still remember it, one of the first slides that Heather said to talk about this culture and this environment, saying, we strive for a really safe and inclusive environment, welcoming to all genders, sexual orientation, and race. And I talk about this quotation in pretty much all of my talks, and it really speaks to me. Teach a girl how to code, and she'll teach for. This is from Reshma Saujani, who is the founder of Girls Who Code. Ladies Learning Code was actually not an original idea. Heather Payne, who's the original founder of LLC, went to a PyLadies workshop in LA. PyLadies is a meetup for women to talk about Python. There's actually a chapter here in Montreal led by Françoise, who will be doing who will also be speaking at this conference. Heather Payne went to a workshop in LA to do Python. It was for women, and she said, this is cool. Why isn't this here in Canada? And she tweeted about it, and that's literally how Ladies Learning Code started, hashtag Ladies Learning Code. We're now in 24 cities across Canada with over 23,000 learners. Even just, the fact that I attended one in Toronto, and now 900 people have learned at least beginner-friendly beginner-friendly coding, I think is saying something. So having that mentorship and passing it along, I think we can really get that going. So there's also that argument that, so are we hiring more women, or are women just not applying? So there's this new thing that I just recently found out about, which is called the Rooney Rule, where a lot of tech companies, including Slack, Pinterest, and Facebook, they want to say at least one woman or one underrepresented minority must be considered in the slate of candidates for every open position. So I think that's a really great idea. I think people will see this as positive discrimination, but when you see that your entire roster is just men, I think we need to step back and say, are we trying hard enough to reach out to these people? Have we reached out to any women in tech meetups? Have we reached out to any women in tech organizations to ensure that, they know that we are hiring? So the other fact is, are women just not applying? And they say that actually women won't apply to a job posting if they don't fit 100% of the criteria. Contrary to men, if they only meet 60% of the application. And this speaks to me very closely because at Dynamo, I just sent them an email because I met somebody at a Montreal Girl Geeks event. He was speaking about his event, And I said, oh, you're looking for a front-end web developer? I'm a developer. Sure, here's my email. And then I stumbled upon the job posting, and it said everything I have not touched before. Angular, Rails, experience in e-commerce. To be honest, if I had seen that job posting, I would not have applied. And I think we need to just push ourselves to, just apply. You never know. But it speaks to me, too. Even if I see other job postings, and I think a lot of women here do, too, they won't apply if they don't meet like 100% of the criteria. Sorry. I think Etsy is a really great example of a case study. They've been sponsoring their women to attend Recurse Center, which was also previously called Hacker School. So they've been sponsoring grants for women to attend, and they grew, their female engineering team grew by almost 500% in 1 year. So we talked about the pipeline, so things that maybe inhibit women from entering the field, from going to that job posting and actually applying. And I want to talk about the culture, about how these women and how we can make an inclusive environment for women to stay within the industry. So this is something that I've recently come to realize over around just over a year that I've been in coding. I think coding is a lot about embracing failure. Reshma Saujani, again, the founder of Girls Who Code in the States, she had this TED Talk for 2016, and she said, "We're raising our girls to be perfect, and we're raising our boys to be brave." This really speaks to me, and I recently had a blog post about, and an interview talking about how the hardest thing about this industry and the hardest thing about web development is recognizing that you don't know everything. You're constantly Googling, you're constantly on Stack Overflow, and you're constantly asking for your peers for help. And I'm still asking for pair programming, I'm still asking for the littlest code reviews, and I'm still growing from that, but it can be really daunting from the very beginning when you're dropped into a field and you don't know exactly, the kind of workflow that they're used to or the code guidelines that they have. It's one of the hardest things to admit to yourself that you don't know everything, and it's really hard for girls. We're taught to be perfect, and it's hard to, write down that piece of code that you're so terrified. You're so terrified that people are going to judge you, but boys will just write it anyway. So this quotation was like, I think it exploded up on my Twitter, and it really spoke to me. JavaScript, The Good Parts by Brenna OBrien. This is an amazing, amazing talk that I think every single JavaScript developer should watch, or even really every developer. Brenna OBrien was actually my instructor at HackerU. And this was a talk that she gave at JSConf Europe in 2015. And she talks about how we can be a little bit more welcoming to developers. I think as developers, especially now, I feel like we're kind of in the millennial aspect of web development right now. And we have like a really passionate community that is incredibly opinionated. There's anger against jQuery, Angular versus React, Grunt versus Gulp, Python versus Ruby, PHP, like all these things. No, but it's true though, and you hear all these things and they're so opinionated, but when you hear all those things, how are you supposed to get started? It's so frustrating. Like, we should just allow people to, try their jQuery out, try their Angular 2 out, and see if they like it or not. But we shouldn't be so opinionated about using a certain workflow, task runner, or web development tool. Ultimately, I think we need to just create empathy and remember what it's like to be a junior developer. I think our culture and our industry could be better at creating mentorship. I think pair programming and code reviews are really, really great. Pair programming meaning not just, two people sitting at a desk and one person typing. I mean, two people typing, exchanging, and working on one keyboard. I think, recently we've been talking about code reviews at Dynamo, and we've talked about the way in which we've been conducting our code reviews. They should be frequent, sufficient, and not based on experience. A junior dev can review a senior dev can review a junior dev, back-end to front-end to back-end. You can learn a lot from that, and I think that when you don't have that sort of hierarchy, it allows that junior developer to feel, they're included. Their opinion, it feels included when they're doing their code reviews. And I think mentorship is really, really important. I really appreciated it when I was working at Dynamo, having someone there to help me out when I didn't understand what was going on. At Ladies Learning Code workshops, we always promise a 4-to-1 ratio of students to mentors, and I always ask everybody, what was your favorite part? And I think chatting with somebody within the industry and having somebody there is always, everyone says that it's their favorite part. And it makes it super collaborative, social, and intimate. You don't have to stop the entire workshop to ask for a question, and you don't feel intimidated. I also recently attended a Yes Montreal Women in Tech focus group, and we had a lot of discussion about mentorship and how important it was to have a mentor. I think we can also be really transparent and open about our company's stance on diversity. I think Slack is a really great example of that. They have a couple of articles on Medium. One is called Slack Building the Workplace That We Want. And they stress, they want to build empathy. We strive to be a place with people with diverse backgrounds, bring equal, diverse opinions where everyone feels able, obligated even, to make things better. We each have an individual mandate to help us get there. And I think that makes it more inclusive, more welcoming, and more likely that you'll have a more diverse environment in the end. And hopefully, when you do that, we won't come up with all of these stories. I don't know if anybody knows about this one, Elephant in the Valley, where it talks about this survey that they conducted in the Valley, and they were talking about, all the hostile environment, workplaces, and situations that they came through. Another one is Model View Culture, which is another really fantastic publication about diversity in tech. I think it is worthwhile to define those guidelines and define that etiquette within the workplace. Recently, something happened actually at my workplace at Dynamo where there was an inappropriate discussion. And Alex, who was the co-founder, immediately, probably just an hour after that discussion happened, he wrote a mass email to everyone saying, Slack, especially on the general channel, so this happened within Slack. Slack, especially on the general channel, but really everywhere, does not allow for nuance and is not built to foment discourse about sensitive topics. I know this can be seen as an overreaction, and I would absolutely love to facilitate a discussion about how best to discuss stuff like this to make sure everyone feels included. I'll give some thought as to how to accomplish that soon. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. And I thought this was a great way to allow for people to feel, oh, okay, something happened and there was an immediate reaction. And it kind of creates guidelines, this something was very inappropriate and we need to put our foot down and say when something is appropriate for the workplace. I think local women in tech groups are really amazing. Shout out to Montreal Girl Geeks, Pie Ladies, Montreal Girl Hack Night, Pixels. There's so many. And I think Ladies Learning Code wouldn't be where it is today without these meetups. I've met so many amazing people, mentors, had amazing conversations about diversity in tech, and I wouldn't be where I am today without it. So, final thoughts. Perhaps these are just general thoughts that make for an inclusive environment and don't tackle 100% of the issue. I can probably go on for like an hour or 2 hours talking about this subject because it's very passionate to me. I'm also not saying, that everyone needs to be a developer, and I'm not saying that we should only hire female developers, but I think that we should step back and see, that this is an issue with those statistics that I presented in the first slides. I think we should teach our kids technology at a younger age prior to them having those gender stereotypes. I think it's great that corporations like Facebook and Google are becoming transparent about their diversity numbers. And I think that when addressing diversity, it's not about just addressing the pipeline, but it's also about the culture. And I'm also not saying I don't have all the answers. I can only talk about my experience. And prior to coming to this 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about tech. I hated technology. I didn't know anything about startups. But I think if you make an inclusive environment and you surround yourself with that community, it will allow for people to feel welcome and want to enter. So it's only been 2 years, but I'm still here, and I think that's pretty cool. And I hope that more people and more women enter into this field as well. Thank you.